we compared OpenClaw, NemoClaw, and Claude Cowork. So your IT team doesn't have to. Which agentic AI platform, OpenClaw, NemoClaw, or Claude Cowork, is the right choice for mid-market companies right now? For most mid-market companies in Q1 2026, Claude Cowork with Dispatch is the only agentic AI option that is both available and deployable without dedicated security infrastructure. NemoClaw launched at GTC 2026 in alpha. NVIDIA itself warns it is not ready for production. OpenClaw has 135,000 plus instances exposed to the public internet and 4 active CVEs in 2026, making it inappropriate for organizations without a dedicated security team. 3 announcements. 5 days. 1 decision your company needs to make. 5 days in March 2026 compressed what would normally be a year of enterprise AI planning into a single unavoidable choice. On March 16th, NVIDIA's Jensen Huang took the stage at GTC 2026 and announced NemoClaw, an enterprise security layer designed to make OpenClaw safe enough for production environments. The enterprise AI community erupted. If NVIDIA was putting its name behind OpenClaw's security, the thinking went, every company needed to get moving. On March 17th, Anthropic quietly released Claude Cowork Dispatch, remote control for the Cowork desktop agent via your phone, with local execution and no API key configuration required. It shipped without a press conference. On March 20th, Claude Code channels arrived, Telegram and Discord integration for developers running Claude Code, turning async agent work into a two-way conversation from anywhere. 3 platforms, 5 days. A landscape that looked one way on March 15th looked fundamentally different on March 21st. Here is what no one is writing clearly enough. These 3 options are not equally ready for deployment. They are not solving the same problem. And for small and mid-market companies, organizations between 50 and 500 employees, generating between 5 mm and 200 dollars in revenue, operating with lean IT teams and real compliance obligations, choosing the wrong one in the next 90 days could mean months of remediation work, security exposure you cannot afford, or worse, buying into a platform so early that you spend QB2 cleaning up a proof of concept instead of scaling results. We have compared all 3. Here is the honest version. The security data on these platforms should reshape how organizations evaluate their agentic AI options. And it is the starting point for the comparison every executive team needs to have before committing to any of them. The mid-market problem no one is naming. Before the comparison, a framing question that will make the recommendation obvious. What does a company in this segment actually have available to deploy and manage an agentic AI platform? The answer for most organizations in this segment is instructive. According to the World Economic Forum's January 2026 analysis, mid-market companies increasingly outpace enterprise in AI adoption speed, not because they have more resources, but because they have structural advantages, faster decision cycles, less legacy infrastructure, and leadership that can actually implement what they decide. The median company's IT team in this range, however, is not staffed to manage a self-hosted AI agent with persistent credentials, YAML policy files, and a dependency on open-source security tools that haven't been battle-tested in production. That gap between adoption ambition and operational reality is exactly where the comparison between OpenClaw, NemoClaw, and Cowork gets important. Because the right question is not which platform is most technically impressive. The right question is, which platform can your organization actually deploy, secure, and scale with the team you have today? That question changes the answer entirely. According to Gartner, worldwide AI spending will reach $2.5 trillion in 2026. But spending patterns in this segment tell a different story than enterprise. While 65% of enterprises increased AI budgets by a median 22% year over year, these organizations are making more selective bets. Fewer platforms, higher usage expectations, lower tolerance for multi-quarter implementation cycles. They need something that works next Monday, not next fiscal year. With that frame established, here is what each platform actually delivers. OpenClaw, the people's agent with an enterprise problem. OpenClaw's growth story is genuinely remarkable. As we covered when Jensen Huang declared every company needs an OpenClaw strategy at GTC 2026, the project went from 0 to 250,000 GitHub stars in 60 days, the fastest growing open source project in history by that measure. The developer community has built thousands of skills, integrations, and workflows on top of it. The momentum is real. The security picture is also real, and it is not compatible with responsible deployment. Without significant investment in infrastructure, most companies in this segment do not have. The lethal trifecta. Security researcher Simon Willison identified what he calls the lethal trifecta of AI agent risk: access to private data, exposure to untrusted content, and the ability to communicate externally. OpenClaw exhibits all three by design. Palo Alto Networks extended this framework at the start of 2026 by adding a critical fourth element: persistent memory. OpenClaw stores context across sessions in sol.md and memory.md files. This means malicious payloads can be fragmented across time, injected into memory on one day, activated when conditions align on another. Traditional endpoint security tools are not designed to detect this kind of attack vector. The exposure numbers. Security Scorecard published internet-wide scanning data in February 2026 showing 135,000 plus OpenClaw instances exposed to the public internet. OpenClaw binds to 0.8789 by default in older versions, meaning it listens on all network interfaces, including public ones, unless explicitly reconfigured. Many deployments never reconfigured it. The supply chain risk. Snike's Toxic Skills audit found that 36% of all ClawHub skills, the community-built extensions that make OpenClaw powerful, contain detectable prompt injection. This means more than 1 in 3 skills available in the community marketplace could be used to manipulate the agent's behavior in ways the user never intended. For a company deploying OpenClaw for customer data analysis, accounts payable, or HR workflows, the exposure is not theoretical. The credential exposure. OpenClaw stores API keys, OAuth tokens, and authentication credentials in plain text Markdown and JSON files in local directories. These files are documented targets for commodity info stealers. Amos, Redline, Luma, Vidar are all known to harvest them. When Sneak, Palo Alto, and Microsoft Security are all publishing warnings about the same platform in the same quarter, the pattern is clear. To be direct about what this means for organizations in this segment, OpenClaw is not inherently unsuitable for enterprise deployment. It is unsuitable for enterprise deployment without a dedicated security team, a hardened infrastructure layer, active monitoring, and a vendor management process for community skills. If your IT function is 2 people who also manage your network and your laptops, OpenClaw is not your platform. The 4 active CVEs filed against OpenClaw in 2026: CVE 2026-32056, CVE 2026-3242, CVE 2026-3211, and CVE 2026-32000, are not the result of OpenClaw being uniquely bad software. They are the result of a project moving fast, at scale, without a bug bounty program or a dedicated security team. That is appropriate for a grassroots developer tool. It is not appropriate for a platform processing your company's operational data. NemoClaw, the right architecture, announced too early. NVIDIA's NemoClaw announcement at GTC 2026 generated enormous coverage, and the architecture deserves that coverage. What NVIDIA has designed, an enterprise security layer that installs onto OpenClaw in a single command, adding OpenShell sandboxing, a privacy router, and YAML-defined policy enforcement, is genuinely the right answer to the security problems outlined above. The launch partner list: Adobe, Salesforce, SAP, ServiceNow, Siemens, CrowdStrike, Atlassian, Palantir, signals that the largest software companies in the world are building toward this architecture. The problem is the timeline. NemoClaw launched at GTC as an early access alpha. NVIDIA explicitly described it as alpha stage and warned developers to expect rough edges. Alpha software does not start enterprise procurement clocks. It does not appear in vendor security questionnaires. It does not pass InfoSec reviews. Analysts tracking the project are consistent on timing. Plan your evaluation for Q3 2026. For broader enterprise deployment, the math points toward 2027. The hardware NemoClaw is designed to run on NVIDIA's DGX Station and DGX Spark, is beginning to ship in spring 2026, but hardware availability and production-ready software are different milestones. There is also a positioning question that matters specifically for this segment. NemoClaw's launch partner list is instructive. Adobe, SAP, Salesforce, ServiceNow. These are not vendors serving the 50 to 500 employee segment. They are the software backbone of global enterprises with dedicated AI teams, multi-year implementation cycles, and IT organizations that can absorb the complexity of on-premises NVIDIA hardware with YAML policy governance. That is the customer NemoClaw is being built for first. Deployments for companies in this range will come, but not in 2026. NemoClaw's architecture addresses OpenClaw's core security weaknesses with genuine sophistication, sandboxed execution via OpenShell, a privacy router that intercepts outbound data, and YAML policy files that define exactly what the agent can access. For organizations with the infrastructure and technical staff to configure and maintain it, this is the right long-term direction. But the right long-term direction is not a deployable solution for a company trying to build agentic AI capabilities before Q3. For leaders in this segment who want to track NemoClaw, and you should, the right posture is watch the GitHub repo, assign someone to follow the Q3 2026 release notes, and plan a structured pilot evaluation in Q4. Do not let GTC excitement compress that timeline into a Q2 proof of concept that produces nothing except technical debt. Claude Cowork, the architecture that makes the recommendation obvious. To understand why Cowork is the recommendation for small and mid-market companies, you need to understand what it actually is. Because the surface description, AI assistant on your desktop, undersells the architecture by an order of magnitude. Cowork is not a chatbot with connectors bolted on. It is a full agentic execution environment running inside a virtual machine on your local computer. That single architectural decision, local VM isolation, is what separates Cowork from OpenClaw at a fundamental level and makes it deployable without a security team. How the execution model works. When you assign Cowork a task, it does not generate a response and wait for your next prompt. It enters an autonomous execution loop. Analyze the request, decompose it into subtasks, execute each step inside the sandboxed VM, observe the results, self-correct if something fails, and continue until the work is done. This is the same agentic loop that powers Claude Code. Observe, plan, act, reflect, now applied to knowledge work instead of software engineering. For complex tasks, Cowork spawns subagents, independent Claude instances that each get their own context window and work on different parts of the task simultaneously. A request like analyze last quarter's pipeline data, draft a board summary, and build the supporting slides becomes 3 parallel work streams, not a sequential conversation. The security architecture OpenClaw doesn't have. Cowork's VM is not a software sandbox. It is a hardware-isolated virtual machine using Apple's virtualization framework. Your files exist inside the VM only if you explicitly authorize a folder. Directories you don't share, your SSH keys, credentials, personal documents, don't exist in the agent's environment. They are not restricted, they are invisible. Compare this to OpenClaw, where the agent operates in your actual file system with access to everything, storing credentials in plaintext markdown files that commodity info stealers are designed to harvest. Network access routes through the host operating system, meaning your existing firewall rules and network policies apply. Data processed by the agent stays on your device. Conversation history stores locally, exempt from cloud retention policies. For organizations navigating SOC 2, HIPAA, or data residency requirements, this is not a feature. It is the prerequisite, what it actually produces. Cowork does not just answer questions, it creates deliverables. Excel spreadsheets with working VLOOKUP formulas, conditional formatting, and multiple tabs. PowerPoint presentations, formatted reports from scattered notes. Batch file operations across hundreds of documents. Statistical analysis with visualizations. These outputs land directly in your file system, not in a chat window you have to copy from. Connectors and plugins. Cowork's connector library, Google Calendar, Drive, Gmail, DocuSign, Slack, HubSpot, and 20 plus others, covers the operational surface area of most companies in this segment. But the real extensibility comes from plugins, packaged bundles of skills, connectors, and sub-agents designed for specific roles or workflows. And for organizations that have already built a persistent AI context layer, Cowork becomes significantly more powerful. The agent operates with the full institutional knowledge of how the business runs, not just access to its tools. Scheduled tasks. You can save any workflow as a scheduled task that runs automatically on a cadence you define. Daily pipeline reports, weekly meeting prep, Monday morning email triage. This is where Cowork starts functioning less like an assistant you prompt and more like an operational system that runs your recurring workflows without human triggering. Dispatch and channels, the remote access layer. Cowork's dispatch feature, released March 17, 2026, adds mobile access to this architecture. You assign a task from the Claude mobile app, summarize last week's client emails, and flag anything that needs a response today. Pull the pipeline numbers from HubSpot and draft a status update, and Claude executes it on your desktop using the full Cowork environment. The setup requires a QR code and 2 apps, no API keys, no YAML configuration. Claude Code Channels, the Telegram and Discord integration released March 20th, extends this for technical staff already running Claude Code. Assign tasks via Telegram message, receive status updates through the same channel. Requires Claude Code v2.1.80+ and administrator enablement on team and enterprise plans. The honest limitations. Complex multi-step tasks hit a 50% success ceiling. For simple, clearly defined tasks, Claude executes reliably. For workflows involving multiple systems, conditional logic, or ambiguous instructions, performance degrades. The research preview status reflects this. Capable beta, not a finished product. Your computer must stay awake. Cowork runs on macOS and Windows x64 and requires the Claude desktop app to be open and the computer active. Background execution while the computer sleeps is not yet supported. Scheduled tasks share this constraint. Cowork activity is not yet captured in audit logs, the compliance API, or data exports, a gap that matters for regulated industries. And conversation memory persists only within projects, not across them. Available on Pro, 20-month tool. Team, $20 to $100 seat month depending on seat type, and Enterprise, $20 seat plus usage at API rates plans. Team plans include Cowork and Claude Code for teams of 5 to 150, with centralized billing, SSO, and admin controls, the pricing structure most relevant for team-based deployment. For companies in this segment, Cowork represents an honest trade-off. A managed, VM-isolated agentic platform with meaningfully less extensibility than what OpenClaw could theoretically deliver, but zero security exposure, no IT infrastructure requirements, and a deployment timeline measured in hours rather than quarters. The architecture is the argument. The 5 criteria mid-market actually uses to make this decision. Abstract comparisons are not useful when you have a board meeting in 3 weeks and a CEO who read the GTC coverage and is now asking why you don't have an OpenClaw strategy. Here are the 5 questions your organization needs to answer, and how each platform scores. 1. Can we deploy it without a security team? OpenClaw. No. The documented vulnerabilities, plain text credentials, network exposure, supply chain risk, require active security management. NemoClaw, cannot evaluate yet. Alpha, Cowork plus Dispatch, yes. Local execution, no API key exposure, no community skills supply chain to audit. 2. Does it work with the tools we already use? OpenClaw. Extensible via community skills, but with the supply chain risks documented above. Every skill requires security vetting before deployment. NemoClaw. Designed for the enterprise software stack, SAP, Salesforce, ServiceNow, but those connectors are still being built by launch partners. Cowork plus Dispatch. 20 plus production-ready connectors covering the operational stack companies in this range actually use Google Workspace, HubSpot, Slack, DocuSign. Available now. What does it cost for a team of 10-50 knowledge workers? OpenClaw. Free software, but API token costs scale with usage. Add security infrastructure, IT management time, and potential remediation costs, and the total cost of ownership is not zero. NemoClaw. Hardware, DGX station, plus enterprise software licensing. Not a realistic price point for companies in this range. Cowork plus Dispatch. $20 $100 per seat per month on team plans, standard or premium, including Cowork, Claude Code, SSO, and admin controls. Enterprise plans start at $20 seat with usage-based billing. 4. What is the compliance exposure? OpenClaw, material, plaintext credentials, internet-exposed instances, and persistent memory that can carry injected payloads across sessions are not compatible with SOC 2, HIPAA, or basic data residency requirements without significant remediation. NemoClaw, designed for compliance, but alpha software cannot be audited against compliance frameworks. Cowork plus Dispatch. Local execution architecture means data processed by the agent stays on the device. Anthropic's enterprise compliance posture, SOC 2 Type 2, GDPR, HIPAA, BAA availability, provides the baseline. 5. Can we build on it, or are we buying a finished product? OpenClaw. Highly extensible. If you have technical staff to manage the security surface area, the ceiling is high. NemoClaw. Designed for extensibility at enterprise scale. The right answer for 2027 with proper infrastructure. Cowork plus Dispatch. Plugins and connectors extend the base functionality. Less extensible than OpenClaw, but the plugin ecosystem is growing. The right answer for organizations that need results in 90 days. The recommendation. Here is the direct version, by organization type. If you are a small or mid-market company with 50 to 500 employees and a lean IT team, deploy Cowork plus Dispatch now. Identify 3 to 5 high-value workflow tasks: pipeline reporting, document preparation, email triage, meeting prep, CRM updates, and run a structured 30-day pilot. Track hours saved per week. Document what breaks and what the 50% complex task ceiling actually means for your specific workflows. Build the internal evidence base now so that when NemoClaw reaches production maturity in 2027, you are making a migration decision with data rather than making a deployment decision from scratch. If you are a company in this range with a technical team and a tolerance for research preview software, consider Claude Code channels alongside Cowork. For developers or operations leads already in the Claude Code workflow, Channels adds async agent management that meaningfully expands what is possible without adding security risk. If someone in your organization is pushing for OpenClaw, ask one question: who owns the security posture? If the answer is, we'll figure it out, or the open source community handles that, the answer to OpenClaw is no for now. Return to this conversation in Q3 when the security tooling matures and you have had time to staff appropriately. If you are waiting for NemoClaw, Q4 2026 is the earliest reasonable evaluation window. Assign someone to monitor the GitHub repo. Do not let GTC excitement start a procurement process for alpha software. The advantage for companies in this segment, identified by the World Economic Forum as a defining trend of 2026, does not come from choosing the most technically impressive platform. It comes from choosing the platform that can generate real operational results in the next 90 days, with the team and infrastructure you actually have. For most organizations in this segment right now, that means Cowork. That is not a permanent answer. It is the right answer for this quarter. Build your agentic AI foundation. This quarter, the organizations that will benefit most from NemoClaw's eventual production release are not the ones watching the GTC keynote replay in March 2026. They are the ones that have spent Q1 and Q2 building internal fluency with agentic AI, understanding which workflows benefit, which tasks need human oversight, which connectors matter most for their specific operational context. Cowork plus Dispatch is not the ceiling. It is the foundation. Here is a practical 90-day path. Weeks 1-2. Identify your high-value workflows. Document the 10 to 15 hours per week of knowledge work that is repetitive, rule-based, and data-dependent. Pipeline reporting, status updates, meeting prep, document drafting, email triage. These are the workflows where agentic AI creates immediate ROI and where the cost of a failed attempt is low enough to learn from. Weeks 3-6. Deploy Cowork and run structured pilots. Connect the tools your team actually uses. Start with Google Workspace and your CRM. Assign specific tasks to Claude. Measure completion quality, not just speed. Build a shared understanding of what the platform does well and where human review remains essential. Week 7-10. Establish your governance layer. Even with Cowork's managed security posture, organizations need internal clarity on what the agent can access, what data should never be processed by AI tools, and who reviews outputs before they reach clients or external stakeholders. Document this now while the deployment is small. The governance framework you build on a 5-person pilot will scale to a 50-person deployment. This is where understanding the broader competitive AI landscape helps. The governance decisions you make today determine how easily you migrate platforms as the market matures. Weeks 11-12. Evaluate, extend, and plan for Q3. By week 12, you will have operational data on time savings, workflow quality, and team adoption. Use it to make your Q3 decision. Expand Cowork deployment, begin evaluating Claude code channels for technical staff, or, if the NemoClaw timeline has accelerated, add a structured evaluation workstream for Q4. The companies that will have a meaningful agentic AI capability in 2027 are not the ones that waited for the perfect platform. They are the ones that started building in 2026, learned from real deployment, and made incremental bets rather than waiting for a single transformative implementation. Your IT team doesn't have 6 months to evaluate 3 platforms. That is exactly why we wrote this comparison. The decision is not complicated once the research is clear, and now it is.